I've had that like in my early career where I went into like panic mode for a second. And
Yeah, you live and learn with that one.
right, you live and learn. And I think that's part of just being an event planner, honestly. There's been a lot of like fires that we have to put out. It's a big part of our job. It's not saying that in-person events should be replaced, because those should never be replaced. But, and you got to remember, like, who's the majority of the workforce now? It's millennials. We're like, there's like I think it's like, I read something the other day, an article. It was like 73% of the decision makers are now millennials now, right? The baby boomers are starting to retire.
But
Right.
I just don't foresee the technology replacing us. I see the technology as giving us the capability to be faster, to be smarter, to be more agile, to provide our clients with better solutions versus it just being like, oh, they're going to replace it. I mean, first of all, here's the big thing, and this is like a running joke for me. In order for clients to actually use things like ChatGPT to replace us, they have to know what the hell they're doing. And they don't.
A lot of people don't.
I mean, let me not say that. I mean, they may be subject matter experts in their area, but they're not marketers. They're not designers. Right. They don't understand what is good, what is bad, what they actually need in order to actually get the results that they're looking for. Meet Andrea, a seasoned event professional with over a decade of experience in the industry. From engineering to technology, she has worked in nearly every aspect of event management. As a senior event manager at CoreStack, Drea has created an entire event marketing program from scratch, making a positive impact on companies' sales funnel and brand recognition. With extensive experience in managing events for B2B enterprises and SaaS companies, Andrea brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the table. 1, 2, 3, welcome to Eventus 365, the podcast that's all about corporate events and the magic behind the scenes. I'm your host, Yanique DaCosta, and I am excited to take you on a journey through the world of corporate events. But before we dive in, let's talk about the stress of creating marketing material for your events. We all know how tough it can be when deadlines are tight and resources are limited, but guess what? YKMD Visual Communications has got your back. Our design firm specializes in working with corporate event professionals just like you, and we're here to help take the stress out of creating stunning graphics for your event. Our team of expert designers can deliver custom brand-compliant designs in just 12 hours. So whether you need branding, signage, marketing materials, or anything else, YKMD's got you covered. Okay, now that that's done, let's start the show. All right, Andrea, we were just having like a very spirited chat, and you were telling us all the things. But since we weren't recording, please share your journey into like the event industry and what inspired you to pursue this career path.
Yeah, I find that it's actually pretty similar when I talk to other people in the event industry. But I didn't like go into college and say, all right, I'm going to become an event planner. Yeah. Seems to not really be the case for most people. Maybe now that more companies are realizing that a professional event planner
is a thing.
Is a thing now, which is great. But like most people, I started off, I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana. So I started off in college and really graduated in mass communications. I was interested in marketing and kind of all aspects of it. I was obviously fresh and new to it. I think the biggest shift was where I went to school. Our program made us do work a year, like as an intern, our last year. So we actually like, instead of taking classes, we were diving right into what we wanted to graduate in. So I worked for a local newspaper in the town, and I did all aspects of marketing. So social media, PR, all of that. Events was part of it. I really started like, getting my feet wet in that. And then when I graduated, I started working for a local engineering company as their like event assistant or marketing assistant. And I was the only person on the marketing team servicing a company that was like 500 people with like 6 offices. So it was a pretty big company.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, not to give away my age or anything, but that was 10 years ago. So, I think also like the space, right? The engineering, the engineering AEC space was they're not as progressive as tech. So they were just getting into like, oh, we need a marketing person. Okay, this person's going to do all of this. And then
And not even realizing like that's not bandwidth for one person. That
no. Oh no.
And expecting like miraculous results. Like, yeah, she's gonna do all this stuff. Wait, no, she's human. She is not a robot and or AI. Got it.
100%. And I was 20. So
yeah.
So I jumped right in, got my feet wet. Part of that was events. Then I really realized, like you said, there's way too many things to do for one person. So I actually got persuaded my boss at the time to hire a content person who was in charge of like social PR, all of that stuff. And then I kind of managed really the events full time for them because we were so busy and they were in so many different states. So I'll be honest, like once I had that event bug, I never went back. I never went back. So, you know, I was in the engineering space for a very long time. I moved to Austin, Texas, lived there for 6 years, worked for a really big engineering firm there. We had 250 events a year. It was crazy. And I had 3 people.
I keep hearing these numbers and I'm just like, these are crazy.
Like, and not that they were all big events, like a lot of it was smaller events too, like local events in their area, but it was me. And then I had an intern underneath me and then an event assistant underneath me. So it was 3 of us managing all of that. And as you know, most events, there's usually like a season for events, right? For me, it's like fall is so busy.
Yeah.
Spring is busy, right? That's when everyone wants to travel. All the conferences are doing that. So it was just a madhouse. And I did that for 4 or 5 years. And then I transitioned into the tech space because there was a need and tech's booming. So it's kind of where I am now. I work for a SaaS company based in Seattle. I moved across the country and COVID forced me to go remote, which is also was a learning curve, but I really like it.
I'm not gonna lie, I've been remote most of my career, like even like pre-COVID. Let me see, like even like 2012, 2013, like I worked with startups that understood the concept of like working remotely, especially like for a designer. And then I worked for companies in between that who were just like, no working from home. And I was just like, why is this happening to me?
Anyway. And then COVID happened and they don't have a choice. So
yeah. So there are a lot of like misconceptions out there about like how people should work and how they shouldn't work. What are some misconceptions you've encountered when it comes to event planning and like how have you addressed them?
I laugh at this question because I get this. I don't get it a lot with people in the industry. Like obviously like companies know the importance of it now, especially in the tech space because it's booming. I get it more when I'm just talking to friends or just acquaintances and they're like, oh, what do you do? And I tell them I'm a corporate event planner and they usually don't know what that means. They usually think I'm like a wedding planner, right? Which is not the case. But I would say like when I'm speaking to people like that and they ask me like, what are the biggest misconceptions? I would say the first one is always that all we do is plan parties. And I laugh at that too, because I do plan parties. That is part of my job, especially if we're at conferences, those big conferences, trade shows. We're dropping so much money. We have such a big event budget. We definitely are exhibiting, speaking, throwing parties as part of it. So, you know, it's a lot more than just a party. I would say the other thing would be, oh, okay, a corporate event planner, you're only working on like big conferences and trade shows. You don't have experience with like smaller events. Well, that's a lie. I'm sure you know that. Like our event program is made up of, and it's different for each company, right? So our event program is trade shows, conferences, summits. Those are the bigger ones. I also was speaking to you before we started, is that we're also doing like more road shows types, like intimate. We'll go to a city. We'll be there for 2 or 3 days. We're hosting 10 to 20 executives or whoever we're targeting. I do that. That's part of my job. Virtual events, obviously, is part of the job. And that could be a smaller event or a user summit that we had to do virtually. I think the other part of my job, which sometimes tends to be a little different for different companies, is that I run our webinar and podcast program as well. So all of that is virtual. Again, sometimes we do very targeted webinars where we'll have 50 people, and sometimes we'll co-host one and we'll have 350 people. So I would say like that's a really big misconception too, that we're only doing large events. And I also would say it's a misconception that when people say, well, only large events are profitable. No, like I honestly, we sometimes win the work quicker and get better deals when it's very intimate.
Yeah.
And we do that a lot at big events. Yeah, it's targeted. Yeah, right. Yeah. So we do that a lot of big events too. Like we might be exhibiting and speaking and throwing parties for 600 people, but we also do like intimate breakfast sessions with 20 executives that we're trying to, and we'll invite some clients. So, I would definitely say like that's probably the second biggest one. The other one is that, oh my gosh, your job sounds fantastic. It's so glamorous. You just get to travel and throw parties and, have this large budget. No. So like, yes, it is part of the job, but any event manager will tell you, no matter if they're a corporate event manager, no matter if they're like, throwing weddings and all, it's not glamorous. It's glamorous when you get there. It's supposed to look seamless and glamorous when you're at the event. You're supposed to stand out and you're supposed to have everything on, everything, that it's supposed to look like seamless. Well, to get there, it's not. It's like I'm planning these things sometimes a year in advance. We're doing I think a lot of people just see the booth and they see the speaking and they don't really actually realize like what we do to promote all of that. Like obviously, we're doing like, email campaigns, social campaigns. On top of that, I'm working with like my social media, my PR, we're doing all of that. On top of that, then like just event logistics is not glamorous at all. I mean, I'm working with vendors, I'm ordering swag, like it's just shipping like could be a nightmare and not glamorous. So definitely would say that's probably the number one. I would be honest, that's probably the number one, is that people look at my job and they're like, oh, this is great, and like it is great, I love it, I wouldn't do anything else, but it's definitely not glamorous. Most of the time my hair is like in a bun, I'm working all hours of the day, especially when the event's on, right? Like there is you're on it from the time the show starts until your networking event is done. And that could be 12 hours.
Yeah. So. And if it's not several days.
Right. Right. And on top of that, it's 5 days. And on top of that, I have 20 employees at the event and I have to tell them, make sure they're on it and doing what they're supposed to be doing and showing up. So yeah.
I mean, talking about like what you're doing at the events, right? Like, can you talk about a time where you've had to like really adapt quickly when it comes to like your event strategy and like a lesson that you've learned from that?
Yeah, there are several times. And I think every good event manager, every good, well-rounded event manager, or someone who their job is to host events and throw events, they know what it is, and they should know. They should have made mistakes, because it only makes you a better a planner in advance. So there's one that sticks out to me, and this was it's pretty relevant because it was the beginning of COVID, or I would say the beginning. It was like the first year of COVID, because everything got canceled the first year. So it was like the second year of COVID when events were like testing it out, seeing if people would come back. We went to Denver. I live in Portland, Oregon. The company I work for was in Austin, Texas. So we had an office and a storage space that we would have we own all of our event materials. So one of the booths was there. And I got my marketing person who is in Austin to ship it. Okay, so and he wasn't attending the event. So he just shipped it to me. I was there with my whole team in Denver. So as every event planner does, I'm like checking constantly, like, is the booth going to get there in time? Making sure it's there. It gets there, and I feel great. We get to set up, and it's me and 10 other people on my team, and we have a process, and we know how to do it now, like really quick. So we got there early, set the booth up, we get the structure up. I have people working on swag. I have people looking for signage, and then I'm looking for the backdrop of the main booth. It was I think it was like a 20 by 20. And I don't see it. I don't know where it is. And I'm like, what in the world? And I'm like counting the boxes, you know, I'm like, okay, everything is here. So I start freaking out because we're about 2 hours before we have to get done. The show didn't start till the next day, thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Come to find out, so I'm like, all right, as you know, we have ABCD plans as event planners. So I'm like, okay, where's the closest FedEx? And where's my designer? Because I'm gonna have to get her to design a file quickly that's like on brand, so I can order this and have this ready.
Yeah.
So I look at the prices, all of that. It's pretty pricey, obviously, to get something printed in 24 hours.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, all right, this is gonna really cut into my budget. What else? So I called the guy who was in Austin. Luckily, he was still at the office. Asked him to go check that area. Come to find out, the booth graphic was like sitting in, and somebody had moved it. It was like sitting in another area where it didn't belong. So it was there. So I was like, okay, what's going to be cheaper?
What's more cost effective, to get it overnighted or to get a new one? Yeah.
Right, because even if you get something printed, there's no guarantee it's going to look exactly how you want it to look, right? So you get to see it. And I've already spent several $100s on it. So we decided, luckily he was a great sport. He was part of the marketing team. He gets it. He was a good sport, got on a red eye and got to Denver at midnight. We woke up, obviously he got there. Luckily we had another hotel room that we were throwing meetings in throughout the conference. So we didn't, like, he got to stay in a suite. And he flew with the booth graphics in his hand, because I was like, I don't ship anything, just bring it on your carry-on. And then the next morning, the show started at 9, so we got there early at 7, and they let us set it up. And then, like, honestly, like, after that, no one knew the difference. There was nothing. And that's the important thing I tell people. It's like, you could literally, it could be on fire, but you have to make sure you have ABCD plan, to where the morning that the event starts, it's supposed to look like this was how it was the whole time.
Or this is how it was supposed to be. Yeah.
Right. You and your team know this wasn't how it was supposed to be, but no one else does. And I think that's like a really important, I've had that like in my early career, where I went into like panic mode for a second. And
yeah, you live and learn with that one.
Right. You live and learn. And I think that's part of just being an event planner, honestly. There's been a lot of like fires that we have to put out. It's a big part of our job. So
naturally. Well, how do you strike a balance between like creativity and practicality when you're talking about like large event budgets? Because you just talked about like having to like keep that in mind, like this might or may not kill my budget. Like, so how do you strike that balance?
Right. And just because I have an event budget doesn't mean that I want to spend that whole budget, which I've also learned. So, for me, I think it's really about learning your audience. First of all, obviously, if this is a new event, you need to do some research on this event, and you need to know the audience that's going to be there, and really know what's going to attract them, as far as like coming up with a creative event campaign. So most of the bigger events that we do, there is a campaign that we launch several months before, right? And it flows all the way through, like pre-show, then to the show, and then post-show. It could be like themed to whatever location you're at. It could be themed to the audience, so, and what they're engaged in. And I think a really important part of that, I think most companies now are realizing the importance of an ICP, which is identified customer profile. You definitely want to identify your customers and know. So for us, you need to identify the audience and know what's going to attract their attention, and what's going to leave. My goal is to always, when people are at the conference, when they leave, when they're on the flight home, that's when you start like thinking about the last 3 days that you were at this event, and like what company stood out, and what do they do. It doesn't have to be like groundbreaking new technology, but I think you just have to get in the mind of people, and that's how they're going to really remember you. And then again, following up right after, right? I think that's also very important. A lot of people, you gotta, if a show ends on a Friday, we're following up with you on a Monday, Tuesday at the latest.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we're talking about like strategies for promoting events, Can you talk about some strategies that you think would do really well when it comes to increasing event attendance?
Yeah. So we've started doing like this can go both ways, because we do obviously, like, I'm a corporate event planner, so we do in-house events like our user summits and all of that. So that's obviously like people that are using our customers on top of like new prospects, right?
Yeah.
So how do we get people to like really want to attend? That is, we have client champions, and I think that is so important. I've learned this as well. Like, we call them catalyst, and it's a champion that is either a partner, an industry partner, or a client that's gonna like be in your corner and talk you up. And that's what, for me, like, that's really what, like, if I'm a CIO of a company, okay, and I'm attending a conference, and this like industry partner that's very well known in the industry is talking up this company and their product and saying like, you should be going to their events, like, this is like all of that. I think that to me is so valuable. And also, like, you're promoting in your event campaign too, but I think that to me is special, because to me, like, I'll do the same thing. Like, I'm not going to go to an event that I haven't heard of, or like, you drumming up like anticipation, right? And excitement, I think is really valuable, especially when you're trying to target like CIOs and CTOs. Like, that's who we target in companies. So hearing from their fellow peers that we should be attending this event, or like hearing from them like about our company or what we've done in the previous past, like, I think that is just so valuable in so many ways. Yeah, I would say that's probably.
I think that's fair. I think that kind of sounds like my big push on like user generated content. Like, if you have like real world feedback from people that are similar to your target audience, it definitely increases the possibility or the likelihood that you're going to have this organic following or this organic growth, because they're just like, nah, I'm just like that guy, I want to go, it should be a thing.
You make a good point, because like we are trying to get more organic in our approach and our growth. And I think that's very important. And you know what, no matter how big you think your industry is, it's not that big. People are going to hear, going to hear about you, and they're going to spread the word, right? So that's what I try to remember, is like, oh, we might think our space, because I'm in the cloud management space for tech, so I might think of it as a huge space. We have like AWS and Oracle, all these big people. But if they're telling, because they're they're partners of ours. So if they're telling the market about our product and like jumping on webinars with us, that's another thing. We use them on webinars. We use them on podcasts. We don't use them just for events. Like, we speak with them at events too. So I think organically feeding those type of people, who then will speak out about your product, and it's just, you can't beat it.
No, I think that's fair. What about technology? Can you tell me about some tips for like incorporating technology effectively into corporate events?
Yeah, I think you should. So there's a lot of talk around this, because obviously in the past month or so, people have just been losing it over like Chat GPT, and like, I swear to God, I'm like, okay, great. Like, when I say losing it, I see people like in my space, or event planners in my space, talk about, people saying like, oh, it could replace you. It could replace a physical event planner, a person. And number one, no, I'm very, I work in the tech space, so I'll say that I am a millennial, which I think is another important data point to think about, is because I think, number one, you should be aware of, as an event planner, you should be aware of the event technology out there. And there's still some that I haven't used and not aware of, and how to ask those questions. Like, I'm a member of a couple of event forums, basically, we're just networking, right, with people in our industry that do the same thing we do. And people will throw like questions in our Slack channel and in our form, like our groups, and say, has anybody ever used this technology? Or is there a great technology? Like, what's the best podcast technology? Like, what's the best, like, so I think just like being aware of those things, because obviously, as you know, tech is growing and there's like new solutions out there all the time. So I would encourage people to really like dive into that when they have time. Ask your like network how they've used it in the past and if they liked it. I would remember that tech is not going to go away. COVID definitely, people knew the importance of technology, but I think COVID, they really had no choice for a good year or two. Everything was virtual, right? So we had to shift into that. I don't think that that's going to go away either anytime soon. It's easier to connect with people around the world over not in-person events. Not saying that in-person events should be replaced, because those should never be replaced. But, and you get to remember, like, who's the majority of the workforce now? It's millennials. We're like, there's like I think it's like, I read something the other day, an article, it was like 73% of the decision makers are now millennials now, right? The baby boomers are starting to retire. And I'm saying we, because I am part of that, is
me too.
Like, we grew up on technology. Like, when we grew up, it was like Apple was blowing up. Like, I mean,
let me tell you like a real joke. Okay. So so if context for you, if you don't know, I'm a graphic designer. I own a graphic design firm. And there are a lot of designers that are free, especially the older ones, right? That are like really freaking out about AI technology and how it could possibly replace us. And I'm like, at the end of the day, I don't think that, at least at this stage, I don't know, circle back with me in 60 years, maybe this podcast won't age well. But right. I just don't foresee the technology replacing us. I see the technology as giving us the capability to be faster, to be smarter, to be more agile, to provide our clients with better solutions, versus it just being like, oh, they're going to replace it. I mean, first of all, here's the big thing, and this is like a running joke for me. In order for clients to actually use things like ChatGPT to replace us, they have to know what the hell they're doing. And they don't.
A lot of people don't.
I mean, let me not say that. I mean, they may be subject matter experts in their area, but they're not marketers. They're not designers. Right. They don't understand what is good, what is bad, what they actually need in order to actually get the results that they're looking for. And if you don't know what you need in order to get the results you're looking for, even if you don't know what the results are, you can't use AI technology because you have no information to give it.
Well, yes. On top of that, you're right. I think it should be totally used to enhance your experience with your clients, or an audience.
Or your skill set, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I think that one thing ChatGPT isn't, because we're just using that as an example, is it's not a person who is skilled in their profession, who has background knowledge and experience and industry knowledge. Like, I've played around with chat GPT recently, just because I was like, what is this all about? Like, why is everyone freaking out? And to me, it still doesn't give that. To me, like, I know right away that it's not a person. Like, you know what I'm saying? So you're right. I think people are, I think just coming to conclusions. I think the smarter way to do it is use it to your advantage. And because people are still going to want, people are still going to want that personal touch and that expert behind anything if they're really serious about it. Like, there's no way.
Well, Andrea, I'm going to tell you a joke. Okay. We're still on ChatGPT, so I'm going to run with that. I use that thing all the time.
Right.
And people don't know, but that's because I don't use it straight out the gate. I take it, I make my revisions, I craft it, and I mold it. Like, no one knows that it started there. Right.
Straight out the gate, you can totally tell. No, I agree. Yes, I have a lot of friends who do the same thing. They'll take it and then they'll mold it, because that's what you have to do. I think that's where it's at right now. I don't know. Again, in 60 years, it could be something different.
Yeah.
I don't believe that people are going to want to get away from working with other people. Yeah. I don't I can't imagine that. We're, as a species, we want to connect with people and we want to work with people. And that's how I think of it right now. Honestly, I'm trying not to be too pessimistic about it, but
no, I think it's fair.
yeah.
Okay. Switching gears.
Okay.
Big gears. We're talking about people wanting to continue to work with people, including people, having people be a part of the conversation. What measures do you take to make sure that your events are inclusive and welcoming to diverse backgrounds and identities?
Okay, let me make a statement. I'll make a statement before I say how I think about it.
Okay.
I think everyone should really take a step back and think about this just in general. And I mean, I'll be honest, I've had to check myself several times, and because I feel this is how I feel about it. I feel because you have to put yourself in your customer's shoes and step away from what you're doing and put yourself as the person that's paying you to run these campaigns and stuff like that. And really think about it. Like, I think that we need to be more aware and have more diversity and inclusion in anything that we're doing. And, I can only control what I can control. So for me, I feel really strongly about it because, and this is the great thing about working in tech is that it's a pretty diverse market and we can only grow from here. Right. So I think for me, it's more of, if I'm taking a step back, if I'm the person who's looking at it, I don't want to hear from just like 50-year-old white guys or one race or one set of people that have the same background. Like, I want to hear different perspectives from different people, different ages, different nationalities, different sexes, all of that have different backgrounds, because to me, that's how you're going to get the most well-rounded like answer, like, or like story. Like, that's how because you're hearing it from more than one set of people. So for that's how I feel personally. Like, when I'm listening to a webinar or when I listen to a panel at a conference, if it's the same type of people just sitting there that grew up, privileged or whatever it is, I'm just like, oh, like, I don't really take it seriously, right? So that's kind of like how I come to think about it. And I honestly have to check myself. Like, I try to do this personally in my personal life too, but like even in my work life, like quarterly, I'm like, okay, what can I do to make sure that, so for me, for instance, if I'm doing a webinar, so I run our webinar program, we have webinars. I try to make sure to feature a diverse group of a set of people, and try to be diverse as I can as far as the topic. And then we bring in their background in that conversation because I want the audience to feel like they're hearing from all different perspectives. So that's one way I do it. Same thing with events. We'll go to an event and I'll have 10 to 15 people there with me. I make sure that I'm pulling different people from different departments. So sales, product, all of that. They're all like different backgrounds, because like that's the way you can show your clients, right? And same thing with speaking engagements too. I mean, we had, I think one of the challenges that we had to overcome was it was a very male dominated, our vertical was very male dominated. You're now seeing more female CIOs, more female like CTOs, all of that coming in. And so as a female, I personally felt strong about it. And I was like, all right, great. So I'm going to bring our head of engineering, who is a female, our head of product, who's a female. I'm going to make sure our salespeople that are there are diverse. And so I think just really sitting back, and also there is no problem with, I think you can always get better. And I think there is no problem with asking your internal team or asking. We have like these clients that are on a committee for us as well, and we'll send them like post show or stuff like that.
It's really nice that you have that kind of resource and that kind of support. That's actually really cool.
Yeah, we have like a whole customer success team that talks to our customers daily. So I I utilize that because they're the ones that are seeing all this from an outside perspective. And one of our questions is, diversity is in our core values. How can we diverse ourselves in our event program more? Who would you like to see us feature more? Like, I think that that's very important. And so I try to do that. And internally when I'm planning as well, like I want to make sure I'm getting perspectives from different departments, different people with different backgrounds. So
one of the guests that I had on the podcast, she is 21 years old. She's in college. So earlier when you were talking about, a lot of event planners go into this not knowing, like she's in college, right? And she's like, yeah, this is what I want to do. But her major is in like marketing. But she's like, no, I want to do events. And so she's like really been focusing on that, honing in on that, like really like molding her skills. And so when I look for like podcast guests, like I also try to diversify my guest pool. And I was like, everybody who's been on my podcast has been around for a while. I mean, I have someone who's been around for like, 30, 40 plus years. But then I have the vast majority of people who like, they're in the millennial age, kind of like me. Yeah. And I'm just like, time to mix things up a bit because like, just like you said, sometimes you have to check yourself because I am guilty of it when I'm like, I'm bringing on all these people from the same generation. They may have like different like cultural backgrounds, but like the fact that they grew up in the same age doesn't really lend themselves to having a very diverse conversation. But then when I was talking to her, she was saying very similar things to what others were saying. I was like, okay, well, nope, it's just law. It's just law. It's law.
Yeah. And I think it's just natural, right? I think it's natural that we subconsciously tend to lean more towards certain things, and we just need to check yourself. Like that's how I feel about it. So it's interesting. It's also interesting to hear from people from somebody new. Like I would love to hear from like someone that's in college and how they find the event world. So yeah.
Well, I think her episode is coming out like a little before yours. So you'll probably get to hear it. As long as you like and subscribe, do all the fun.
I will.
Shameless plug.
That's right.
Okay, cool. I think that was actually a really great place to kind of wrap up. But before I let you go, my last question is, can you tell us like one event that you think all event professionals should attend at least once in their career?
Yeah, this is a good one. I actually liked that you asked this question or told me, gave me that opportunity to say it, because I really, I think when I was younger in the industry, I was so focused on like just getting the work done and making sure that people took my career seriously. So I kind of like I would say for a few years, I didn't like feed my own career, right? And network enough. So let me preface by saying that, like, I think everyone in any space that they're in, but event planning is what we're talking about. I think everyone needs to be a part of any networking groups, any forums with people that do the same thing as you. Even if you're interested in becoming an event planner, like look at all of that. Like that, to me, being involved with a group of people and just having that constant communication with them is very important. This is how I heard about this event. So I would say, I don't know, about 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, I was still, a couple of years into my career as an event planner. And so I really wanted to, and my company that I was with at the time was very supportive of giving us personal growth. And my boss encouraged me to look into some of these events or certifications, whatnot, right? So one of these events is called the special event. It's also combined with another event called Cater Source, but I've gone, I think 3 years in person and once, I want to say virtually, like during COVID. So this event usually happens, it travels around, but it's been in San Diego quite a few times. So basically what it is it's a forum for event planners, and not just corporate event planners. It's like wedding planners, event planners that do other events. Like event planners that get hired by a corporate event planner to help with their event campaigns and event programs. So it's all of those people in one room. And on top of that, it's all of these great vendors, like new technology, new, like Cater Source is part of that event. So that's obviously like new food and stuff, like vendors for that kind of stuff, cocktails, like all of that kind of stuff. And it's like really cool things. Like the trade show's full of those people. So you'll get to go and say like, oh, cool. Like I have an event coming up for this party and this would be really awesome to do. So like you get to see all of that. And then you're networking with people just like you for 5 days. And I would say the sessions are very valuable. There's a lot of sessions about kind of like this conversation, like, you know, learning experiences and how they've, you know, learned from those and what they recommend. And then there's also like, the good thing about this event is that it's not just sessions, it's also working sessions. So I don't know if you've noticed, but I have a tagline on my event, on my LinkedIn page, and I use it everywhere I go, but it's a Jedi Master of the event world. And I remember this as being like the most educational session that I took in my first year there. And it was like, how do you sell yourself? Like, how do you sell yourself and stand out? You know, and it was just this lady who was like, made her whole career on her tagline. I forgot what her tagline was. It had something to do with like crayons or something, but it just like, she spun that one tagline into her whole career, into her resume, like into her, she does speaking engagements now. She's like known as the Crayola lady. I'm gonna have to find it for you, but
please.
She did like a really cool session just on like how you could better yourself and like look and use that ahead. So I love the event. I love the event. And I recommend that everyone try to go if they can. I mean, and a lot of these sessions are also, the good thing is that a lot of these sessions are also used as credits that you can use if you're getting like your CMP certification or your
like tell us the name of the event again.
It's called the special event. So it's the special event plus Cater Source is what it's called, because they're basically both events combined now.
Yeah.
It's once a year. I believe it just happened. I didn't go this year, which is sad, but I believe it just happened. So it's once a year. It's really great. I think everyone should go. It's a great time to better yourself and to better your company, because you're going to come back with so many ideas.
I love that. Thank you so much, Andrea, for everything that you just shared.
Thank you.
All the tips, all the fun stuff.
I
know people are going to listen to this and leave with some really valuable information.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. That was my goal. So, you know, I like to be honest. Here we go.
Perfecto. Thank you.
Good to meet you.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Eventus 365. We hope you enjoyed listening and learning something new today. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform to help event professionals discover us. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode, and sign up for our newsletter for behind-the-scenes content and updates on upcoming events. If you have any suggestions for future topics or guests, or just want to say hello, you can reach us at info@eventus365.com. We love hearing from our listeners. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on Eventus 365.